let's talk about Collin Klein. Football fans, you guys are gonna, of course, know Collin Klein is Heisman Trophy finalist at Kansas State as a quarterback, coached quarterback coach for Kansas State for a number of years, and then was the offensive coordinator there for 2 years. At 34 years old, he had a season where he ranked 34th in points per game and 10th in points per game as an offense. Yeah, so some pretty dang good offenses there. He's headed over to College Station in Texas to be coaching for Texas A&M with Mike Elko. Look, uh, you, I'm an Aggie. You couldn't tell. You were more excited about this hire than even I was. So I'm going to let you kind of talk about Collin Klein a little bit and why you think he's one of the best hires in college football this past cycle.
Well, I think what he's done at the quarterback position for Kansas State has been awesome. I mean, not Skylar Thompson, the guy that got drafted in the NFL, Avery Johnson, the guy that he recruited, Will Johnson, the guy he developed, stuck with him, right? Like, and obviously what he did, Adrian Martinez, the guy that kind of revitalized his career, what he does running the football with his quarterbacks. And I think Wigman, he's got a great arm, but I do think he's pretty darn mobile. I know he's been injury prone. I'm not injury prone, okay? In a
Just one
pretty
injury.
significant injury in his sophomore season, obviously. But I don't know if you want to hit taking all these hits. Regardless, so you've got kind of depth there with Henderson and Reed. Anyways, I think it's really exciting. I like Bob Petrino, but obviously, like you needed to get away from Fisher, Jimbo Fisher, and obviously Mike Elko comes in, defensive guy. You believe in that side of the football is going to be fixed, not fixed, but going to be a well-oiled machine, right? With Mike Elko, the offensive side, the offensive coordinator was a very important hire. Recruiting and developing and scheme, all very important, right? And I think Colin Klein, what he does in the running game, improving your O line, right? And what they can do in the ground and pound, taking advantage of some of your good running backs, but also obviously development of Connor Wickman is going to be the storyline, I think, this fall for the Aggies. What say you?
Well, the coaching staff around him is also fantastic, right? Holman Wiggins, Adam Cushing. So you really like the situation that he's in. You like the talent that's there. Now the question is that all Aggie fans have, okay, is what is this offensive line going to look like, right? And I can tell you that Colin Klein is going to make sure that this offensive line is better. If not, play to their skill set, right? I mean, we saw Kansas State. Look, they do not have the biggest boys on the offensive line. Cooper Beebe isn't even. I don't think he's. Is he that big? I mean, he's wide, but he's not like long, and he just gets people moving. He gets defensive lines confused, right? I think in his scheme and his deceptiveness, his misdirections, I think it's going to open up a whole new can of worms for Texas A&M. I think he's going to enjoy having three different running backs with three different skill sets entirely. We'll see what he does on the offensive line. I mean, he's kind of trying everyone out everywhere. I think there's enough pieces. It's just how is he going to put it together, right? And he's going to have to work with Adam Cushion real hard on that one. But we'll see how it goes. I have a lot of faith in Colin Klein. I loved watching him, of course, as a kid. Uh, I say as a kid, I mean it was like what 10 years ago, so I was a kid, I guess. But yeah, I love this hire, man. It was a really good hire. Now there's some other offensive coordinators out there that were really good as well that Texan would have liked to hire. Yeah, absolutely. But Colin Klein is, you know, a 450-foot home run and a 385-foot home run. They're home runs, both of them are home runs. So I was a big fan of this hire, and I think, and of course, the rest of the coaching staff that Mike Elko put together, it's just there's just still a lot of questions, to be answered this fall, and I think the talent is there. So unlike some of these other guys, like Elijah Robinson, like Blake Baker, uh, like I don't know how many or Joe Rossi, like this offense is kind of ready to perform now, in a sense. Like, yeah, sure, there's improvement to be made talent wise, but down the road, but there are pieces there where like I think right away you're kind of gonna get a good picture if Colin Klein can kind of steer this thing in the right direction.
It's kind of just start the ignition and the pieces, like you said, the pieces are there. And what he did, I thought really well at Kansas State was spread the football around. And like you said, how multiple he was running the football with different bodies, what he can do at A&M. You got three different running backs. You got a quarterback. I mean, he did similar thing at Kansas State where you had Giddens and Ward, two different body types. You got Will Howard and Avery Johnson, two different body types. You've got Ben Snoop, Phillip Brooks, Chase Brown. Like you got all these guys that he did last year, and I would even argue that there's more way, a lot more, significantly more talent on the A&M roster in the skill position than he's ever had. And I mean, you got five, six wide receivers that you feel good about, right? And if you're A&M, you've got a couple tight ends you feel good about, a couple quarterbacks, couple running backs, like you mentioned. The O line, they'll get that. That'll be a whole different animal. But I just, are you excited to see the multiple uses what they can do? I mean, I feel like I've almost been frustrated with how like a guy like Moose Muhammad's been used in the past couple of years, where I mean, it feels like the offense was so stagnant and like not predictable. But I don't know. Are you expecting to see, you know, much different, quick uh, production and product on the field than it was with Jimbo Fisher?
There are weapons on this offense that can be, I say can be, superstars. They can be superstars. And I think Collin Klein gives him a really good chance to do just that. You look at a guy like Noah Thomas, two spring games in a row, two springs in a row, has been absolutely dominant, right? And he was really good in the season. Can he be a number one in the SEC, right? Can Moose Muhammad? We have seen ridiculous flashes from Moose Muhammad in his time when he is playing. It is nuts. Is he going to get on the field? Is he going to stay on the field? Is he going to? Can he block? Right? Like what are these? There's some really 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 freaking good talent in the running back room. Like I already mentioned. I mean, what are we talking about? Ruben Omens. I mean, you guys watched the spring game. I mean, Le'Veon Moss. You watched him last year. I mean, just run through people consistently. Amari Daniels is in there for shits and gigs. I mean, so I'm very high on Colin Klein. I do think that right away, I think you have a chance to see either something special, and just because they're not successful at the beginning doesn't mean that it won't work out, through the course of the season or a couple years, whatever. But I am saying right now that do not be surprised if something happens and something sparks early on because the talent is there.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is like there's if you tell me like you could name two to three players on this team and who leads the team in receptions or receiving yards, and like I wouldn't be surprised. And I think that's also the beauty of Colin Klein too, is like he doesn't care. He had a tight end leading him receiving last year. He had a running back was, their fourth best receiver. So like it's I think he just wants production, and I think he understands that. I mean, you remember you watch him play, he was gritty player for Kansas State and Bill
Oh
Snyder.
yeah.
Like it was awesome. And
Oh
I think
yeah.
his coaching style is a similar way where it's like, and I think fans, I think A&M especially is gonna appreciate that and love that, where it's like every week's a new player, right? Doesn't matter who it is. It's the name on the front is different than the name on the back, more important than the name on the back, obviously. And I think it's pretty exciting. That's why I love it there. Now, obviously, you mentioned there's other, coordinator hires that you could have had. Colin Klein, like I don't want to ask you to give a
Sure.
grade right now, obviously, because he hasn't even had a snap yet. It's been one spring. A lot has to happen. A lot has to change. But like in terms of, would you rather run it back with? You think it's a clear upgrade over Bobby Petrino?
I think it's a clear upgrade. I think it's a clear upgrade. So, but now, then again, Bob Petrino was running Jimbo's offense, and like Bob Petrino in interviews talked about, how the language of Jimbo's offense is very complicated, which for Bobby Petrino is a guy who's forgotten more football than probably almost anyone in college football has, learned. Like that's shocking. So I'm going to give Bobby Petrino the benefit of the doubt. I think he can do really well where he's at right now, but I do think that based on what we saw last year, if we have to go off something, right, I would say that you have to go off something, right? So I would say it's an upgrade based on what we saw last year. Again, recency bias, like we talk about, but it is what it is. Let's move
Last thing I
on.
do want to talk about
Oh,
real quick
sure.
though is the recruiting aspect to Collin Klein. Now, obviously, Kansas State, they're not a recruiting, national program, but they've done a good job there, bringing in some talent, identifying guys. Avery Johnson was a pretty high recruit as well. How do you think? I mean, who signed Longstreet? Big time get for you. I
Hmm.
believe that's is that how I say the name? Husan Longstreet.
Yep. Yep.
5-star
Uh,
quarterback for you.
how about the
You
offensive
feel
line?
pretty good.
I mean,
Yeah.
you just got another one a couple hours ago. I mean, like as we're recording this on May 28th, I mean, there's so many offensive line pieces, right? Last year at the end of the year, you landed some receivers in the recruiting or in the recruiting trail late. Ashton Bethel Roman, you had Ernest Campbell, you had Isaiah Williams, you had I mean Terry Bussey. I mean he'll probably play DB, but like uh still I'm sure he was part of the conversations. When Terry Bussey was on visits and whatnot. But like just in general, I think Collin Klein's can be an effective recruiter. All right. He'll be fine.